What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and I'm not going to lie, it feels like Christmas Eve. I'm recording this Wednesday night. You're going to see this Thursday morning, and then we finally get football. For you guys, it'd be tonight. So I'm excited. I'm pumped. We're already talking through week 1 content. We did RB rankings yesterday, and today we're going to go through my top 36 wide receiver rankings for week 1 fantasy football to make sure that you guys are ready to go for the Thursday night game, for the weekend of games. I'm excited. Let's not waste any time. If you enjoy, make sure to get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go. All right, now we are doing something a little bit different recently, where we are just putting up on the screen my must-start, no-doubter wide receivers. You took all of these guys in the first 20 picks of your drafts. You're starting them 1 through 9 here. Now, of course, before we even get into the players, this is a tier list. I feel much stronger about the tiers themselves than I do the player X versus player B, especially when they're right next to each other. And I also want to say, this is for full PPR. You can use them for half PPR. And if you want the entire rankings of my top 50 wide receivers, my flex rankings, my top 50 running backs, top 30 quarterbacks will do. That'll all be on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You'll find the link in the description and comment section down below. On Patreon, you will get my weekly rankings every single week, my rest of season rankings, my waiver wire article every week where I give you my waiver targets plus how much I'm bidding in terms of fab. And then on top of that, my Patreon exclusive Sunday morning start sit stream. So that's all there for you guys. But if not, enjoy this video. Now, again, the first 2 tiers. Now, these aren't tiered by anything. It's just 1 through 4, 5 through 9, just so I can fit my camera in the top right. If I did 9 wide receivers across the board, it would look all lopsided. But our top 9 is as follows. We have Jefferson. We have Jamar Chase. Tyreek Hill. I will say Amon-Ra St. Brown, absolute smash this week, where they're going to be in Kansas City as underdogs. Lots of points in that game. Highest over-under of the slate. Amon-Ra St. Brown could come out of there with 14 catches and 20-plus PPR points. It wouldn't shock me at all. And then we also have CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Davante Adams, and then Stefon Diggs. Now, if you're like, why is Stefon Diggs so low? He's playing versus Sauce Gardner. Davante Adams also playing versus Patrick Surtain. So, tougher matchups, but still, if you have them, you're starting them. I just have them towards the bottom of this must-start tier. Now, we move on from there. We have our stardom fringe wide receiver 1. So these guys you likely drafted in rounds 3 or 4. You're going to probably start them anyways, but I want to still cover them, especially if you're in a shallower league that's like 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, or if you just kind of need those words of encouragement for any of these players in this tier. And first up at wide receiver 10, right, we had our wide receiver 1 through 9 up top here. We have Calvin Ridley, who's going to be on the road versus the Colts. And I really like this for Ridley. This is going to be his first game back in like a year and a half. He could just burst onto the scene. It wouldn't shock me at all if Calvin really came out here and just absolutely dominated, and then we were just like, okay, he's a must-start guy for the rest of the year. That's 100% in the range of outcomes, especially in this matchup where he's going to be on the road versus a Colts team that is pretty brutal in terms of their secondary, where they lost Stephon Gilmore. They have the 31st ranked secondary according to PFF heading into the season, and the Jaguars have the 6th highest team total this week. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about team totals and spreads. This is all Vegas stuff in terms of how much points teams are going to score, right? They come out with a over-under for the entire game, right, the total points, and then based off the spread, you can kind of imply how much a team is going to score. And Vegas is one of the sharpest odds makers, projectors out there, so we're going to be talking through them a ton. So when we say Calvin Ridley, their team total, right, the team total of the Jaguars is the 6th highest. Vegas has them projected for 25 points. Again, 6th highest in the NFL this week, which is really good. They're going to be on the road, which means that they probably won't sit on a lead and sort of salt things away with a running back. Likely they get out there, score fast, score early. They pass the ball a ton. And it wouldn't shock me at all, again, if Calvin Ridley came out here and immediately made a statement in his first game back. Now, at wide receiver 11, we have Jaylen Waddle. And this is a game that you want to attack, right? He's going to be on the road versus the Chargers. The Dolphins are. And the Chargers-Dolphins game has the 2nd highest over-under of the week at 50.5. It's the only other game outside of the Chiefs-Lions game that has a 50-plus over-under. There should be absolute fireworks here. They are underdogs on the road, so they're +3 underdogs to the Chargers, which means that they're probably going to be playing from behind. Raheem Mostert's their only serviceable running back right now. And they were also 7th in pass rate over expectation last year. So they're going to be passing the ball a ton. If they win this game, it's going to be via the passing game, and they're going to be passing a ton in what should be a high-scoring matchup. So the Chargers' pass defense is pretty strong, right? They have Asante Samuel Jr. And that whole gang of players. Derwin James can sometimes cover the slot as well. But in this environment, you kind of just have to bet on these guys. After that, we have our wide receiver 12, DK Metcalf. Now, we're making some assumptions for this video. First of all, I wanted to talk about it up top, but Cooper Kupp is listed as out. So Cooper Kupp's not going to be on this list. JSN is going to play this week, but JSN coming off the wrist injury, I think he's going to be more of a decoy and just sort of be... He's not going to be a focal point of this game plan, JSN. So I'm not really factoring him in a ton. I have DK Metcalf as a top 12 option this week, where the Seahawks are projected for the 5th most points this week. They're going to be at home, 5.5-point favorites, which means that they probably won't have to pass the ball a ton in order to win. But I think that we see like DK Metcalf could have 80-plus yards by halftime against PFF's 32nd ranked secondary in the NFL with no Jalen Ramsey. It could just be absolutely brutal for that secondary, and a big DK Metcalf versus those corners could just be curtains. Now, at wide receiver 13, we have Keenan Allen here, who is also a part of that Miami Dolphins game where there's going to be a ton of points here, and they are home favorites by 3 points, but still versus this Dolphins defense, they have Jalen Ramsey on IR. They have Nick Needham out for this week. I think that he's on PUP as well. So this secondary is pretty depleted. Xavier Howard has been kind of overrated the last couple of years. Keenan Allen could just absolutely dominate out of the slot, and the Chargers are projected for the 2nd most points this week. So Keenan Allen in a really good spot here. Really good week 1 projection, where in drafts he sort of slipped because of his age, but in week 1 you can project him very well. After that, we have wide receiver 14, Tee Higgins, who's going to be in Cleveland on the road here, projected for the 7th most points this week, this Bengals offense, and they are home favorites again versus the Browns. It could be fireworks again. 7th highest team total. The Browns could sort of up the pace. They've been talking all offseason about passing the ball a lot. And Tee Higgins versus a secondary that has a banged-up Denzel Ward. He's questionable for this game. If there's no Denzel Ward, then both of these Bengals wide receivers are at risk of being like top 3 wide receivers this week. I want to say Jamar Chase had like a massive blow-up game for like, I don't know, I want to say like 13 catches and like 100-plus yards versus these guys last year. So Tee Higgins, really, really strong start. The Bengals passed the ball a ton. They were 2nd in pass rate over expected last season. Now, if you're like, what's pass rate over expected? It's just on a given play, like let's say it's 3rd and 1, you have a low expected pass rate, and if you pass there, then you have a high pass rate over expectation. So just based on your situation, the score, down and distance, how much are you passing over what is expected? The Bengals, again, 2nd only to the Chiefs last year in pass rate over expected. Then we have wide receiver 15, Chris Olave, who's going to be at home versus the Titans. This isn't a great game environment. This over-under is like the 5th lowest or like the 3rd or 2nd lowest. It's bottom 5 in terms of scoring here. Both of these offenses in the Titans and the Saints were bottom 10 in pace of play last year. This is going to be a low-scoring, slow-paced game. But on the bright side, you do have Chris Olave at home in a dome, 16th highest team total, meaning, you know, like league average scoring here. And the Titans defense gave up the most fantasy points to wide receivers last year. So if Olave picks up where he left off last year and commands a bunch of targets against a very suspect secondary, he should be a strong start this week. And then the last wide receiver in this tier at wide receiver 16 is DeVonta Smith. The Eagles have the 9th highest team total this week. Really what it comes down to is how many of those points are scored through the air and how many of those points are scored via the ground. Now, in DeVonta Smith's favor, this is a really good matchup where the Patriots' secondary is pretty depleted. They have a rookie Christian Gonzalez out there that DeVonta Smith is probably going to make pretty easy work of. And then you also have this surprising spread where the Eagles are on the road versus the Patriots, and they are 3.5-point favorites. That's not a huge margin, right? So that's not a blowout. That means that they should be in the game the entire time, and that means presumably more pass attempts. So they could get behind versus a Belichick that's at home in an opener. Usually he looks good there. And you can see DeVonta Smith be a part of a passing offense that actually has to pass the ball to win for the first time for the Eagles since like the playoffs last year. Moving on, we have our comfy wide receiver 2s. These are just guys that you can set as your wide receiver 2s, set and forget it. It just feels good. It's comfortable. None of these guys, there's not too many questions around them. And first up, at wide receiver 17, we have Deebo Samuel, who's going to be on the road versus the Steelers. And there's really not much to love about this environment, right? It's going to be like low scoring, 49ers versus the Steelers. The Steelers revamped their secondary with Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson. But Deebo Samuel in week 1 is going to be a big part of this game plan. They are on the road versus the Steelers team. So I would assume that he's going to have some combination of a bunch of rushes and catches and targets. And with that, Deebo Samuel every week has like top 5 upside. So I'm very much comfortable starting him here. If you draft him in the top 4 rounds, he should be in your lineup. Same thing with Amari Cooper, who is playing at home versus the Bengals. as underdogs. So they should pass the ball a bunch at home. And we know Amari Cooper last year, I was looking back at it, it's insane. He had 18 points per game at home last year in like a 9-game sample, 11.5 points per game on the road. He is at home as an underdog. They should have to pass the ball to keep up with this Bengals offense. Amari Cooper, a smash play this week. After that, we have Mike Williams at wide receiver 19 at home versus the Dolphins. Again, the Chargers are in a smash spot where they have the second highest team total this week versus a Dolphin secondary that is depleted to say the least with no Jalen Ramsey. Mike Williams, a great like high upside wide receiver 2 play this week. And at last up here, we have Tyler Lockett as our wide receiver 20 at home versus the Rams. And then we talked about it with Metcalf, but this is an offense that's projected for the 5th most points. The Rams have the 32nd ranked secondary on PFF, and I don't expect a ton from JSN this early in the season, especially off of that wrist injury. Moving on, we have the wide receiver 2s on bad offenses tier. And these are wide receiver 2s that you're likely starting, but they aren't like sexy or comfy. They're just guys that are like PPR plays on bad offenses, and the epitome of that is Drake London. This Falcons offense, they are at home versus the Panthers. They are 3.5-point favorites, which means that they're probably just going to play slow and run the ball, which isn't great for Drake London. But on the good side is that he should still see a massive portion of the passing game in this offense. And the Panthers secondary ranked 4th in fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers last year. They gave up a ton of points to wide receivers, the Panthers. So Drake London could find himself, if he is as much of a focal point of this passing offense as he was last year, he should have a bunch of targets and challenge for like a touchdown. After that, we have Diontae Johnson, who I'm really coming around on, especially in this week, where he's going to be at home versus the 49ers as underdogs. So the Steelers should have to pass the ball to win in this matchup against the 49ers, who have a very, very good run defense. I want to say that they allowed the fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs last year. But on the flip side, they allowed the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And Pat Thorman does a really good pace of play column every week on Establish the Run. And I'm going to read this blurb on kind of what he feels about the Steelers. He said, despite their rough matchup with the visiting 49ers, the Steelers continue to show signs of a sped-up offense. Every snap but one came with at least 10 seconds remaining on the play clock during both the drives of Kenny Pickett behind center in week 2 of the preseason, and they followed up with a pair of fast drives that averaged 9.9 play clock seconds remaining in week 3. The Steelers were mid-pack in pace last year, but with quality pass catchers at his disposal and Pickett showing improvement, Pittsburgh scored touchdowns in all 5 drives he started this preseason. We might have hidden play volume value on our hands. Now, he breaks down like the entire slate, what he thinks can be like shootouts and pace of play, upside sort of games. And he has the Steelers where in the preseason they've been playing very fast, snapping the ball with a lot of seconds left on the clock. And if they find themselves down to the 49ers here and any of this preseason usage sticks, they could have a much higher passing volume attack than we sort of expect from them right out of the gates here. Again, this is a weak secondary. I actually really like Diontae Johnson this week. I'm actually going to make an audible. Live on air, we're making an audible. I'm moving Diontae Johnson to wide receiver 21 on air. I do think that he has a really nice spot this week. Now, after that, we have Mike Evans as our wide receiver 23, and we'll put Godwin next to him as well as our wide receiver 24. And what's a pretty much a dream matchup for the Bucs wide receivers here. They are on the road versus the Vikings as 6-point underdogs. Now, this is a dome, which promotes scoring, and they're going to have to pass the ball the entire game down to a team that's going to play fast and pass the ball and score a bunch. So in an effort to keep up with that, they should pass the ball. And this is a Viking secondary that gave up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers last year. And playing behind all game, they're going to have a ton of opportunity to exploit that secondary. Now, I prefer Mike Evans here because the Vikings give up the 2nd highest explosive pass rate last year, meaning just like big pass plays, which is, of course, Mike Evans' specialty. Whereas the only strong part of the secondary for the Vikings is slot corner Byron Murphy, who projects to be covering Godwin for most of the game. I'm not sure it's going to matter a bunch, but when we're splitting hairs between the two, I prefer Evans this week. Then at wide receiver 25, we have DJ Moore, who's not in the prettiest of spots here, where it's a similar story to London and Diontae, but it's a little bit less promising here, where the Bears played slow last year. They're going to be at home versus the Packers as 1-point favorites. The Packers last year also played slow. So this might just be a low-scoring, slow, boring game where the Bears just run the ball the entire time and you just get frustrated with DJ Moore, who's going to see a lot of coverage from Jair Alexander as well. So he's not a great start, again, wide receiver 2 on bad offense, kind of epitomizes him, along with DeAndre Hopkins in a very similar spot here where we talked about this matchup with Olave, where he's on the other side of this, where the Titans are in New Orleans as 3-point underdogs, projected for the 29th most points this week. So really low scoring for the Titans this week in terms of what their expected output is. And again, these are two teams that were bottom 10 in pace of play last year. It should be a slow, low-scoring game. But I was going to say on the bright side, but also DeAndre Hopkins is going to have to see Marshawn Lattimore for a lot of this game. So that's also pretty brutal. But on the bright side, the Titans are underdogs in a dome game, and they should be forced to pass the ball more than they would like to in this environment. Now, moving on from that, we have our high-end wide receiver 3s. First up at wide receiver 27, we have Jahan Dotson at home versus the Cardinals. And these high-end wide receiver 3s are guys I feel very much fine putting in my wide receiver 3 spot or in a 2 wide receiver 1 flex league. Very fine putting them in my flex spot. All very strong plays considering where you probably drafted them. And Jahan Dotson here, we're going to assume that Terry McLaurin is either out or he's playing hurt. So I'm not going to rank, like I feel pretty uneasy about starting Terry McLaurin. But Jahan Dotson, I think, is in a pretty decent spot here where, yes, they are massive home favorites to the Cardinals, right? 7-point favorites here. But we could very much see them come out here and just absolutely dot up this defense. You have Jahan Dotson as well, who I think they're going to lean on as McLaurin sort of works back here. Had the highest target share by far in the preseason. And the Cardinals secondary is awful. They're rolling out Markel Wilson, who was like a 4th-round pick a couple years ago, and 6th-round rookie corner that I don't even know his name. Jahan Dotson, if he's as good of a route runner as guys like Matt Harmon has told us, then he should cook those guys pretty easily. Now, at wide receiver 28, we have Christian Kirk. We talked about it with Ridley, but this is a really nice environment where the Jaguars have the 6th highest team total here. The Colts have the 31st ranked secondary on PFF. And we just want pieces of this passing offense. They were top 10 in pass rate over expected last year. They should get out to a lead early, and I think it's going to be via Ridley or Christian Kirk this Sunday. Now, after that, we have wide receiver 29, Brandon Aiyuk, who's going to be in Pittsburgh in that same game as Deebo Samuel and Diontae Johnson, of course. And I got to be honest, I don't love Aiyuk this week. The Steelers had a bad secondary last year, but they did revamp it with Patrick Peterson and Joey Porter Jr. Now, I think Aiyuk probably eats up Joey Porter Jr., but it's at least not a weakness at this point. And the 49ers are favorites here. They might not have to really play from behind and pass the ball to beat the Steelers, though if they do, Aiyuk is always liable to catch a 60-yard pass, score a touchdown, make somebody miss. So you can only rank him so low as like a boom-bust flex option, Brandon Aiyuk. Then our last wide receiver in this tier, wide receiver 30, Courtland Sutton. Now here we're going to assume that Jerry Jeudy is out. So Courtland Sutton is the number 1 passing off option in this Broncos passing off offense. I'm struggling, fellas. I don't know what the heck's going on. We are recording pretty late here, but Courtland Sutton is the number 1 passing option on this Broncos passing offense here versus a Raiders secondary that ranks 30th on PFF heading into the season, and the Broncos have the 13th highest team total, which is sort of surprising. Vegas thinks that they're going to score a decent amount here. It's also worth noting that Courtland Sutton went from 10.4 points per game last year with Jeudy to 13.3 points per game without Jeudy. So it's a pretty sizable bump here, and if Sutton actually shows that he can produce post-2019 here without Jerry Jeudy, then he probably moves up to your wide receiver 2s on bad offenses when you check back next week. Then we have our wide receiver 31, Christian Watson. And I originally had him as in this year with wide receiver 2s on bad offenses around like wide receiver 21, but I moved him all the way down to wide receiver 31 because I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but Christian Watson's status for this week is up in the air. And I didn't know that until I researched this video. It's Wednesday and he didn't practice today. And, like, he's, like, seriously questionable. Like, not just, like, oh, it's just the queue is on ESPN. It's going to go away by Sunday. No. Like, this is for real. Where Christian Watson hasn't been practicing. He pulled something with his hamstring. So, even if he does play, he's at risk to re-aggravate it and, like, leave the game early. We saw him do it a ton last year. It's a pretty brutal spot. And he's also in a pretty brutal game environment where we talked about with DJ Moore, but this is going to be a low-scoring, slow game versus the Packers versus the Bears here. And coming off an injury, I'm just not trying to play Christian Watson. So to me, he's a boom-bust wide receiver 3 flex low-end option at best, which, by the way, this tier is low-end wide receiver 3 or flexes, which are just, again, guys you don't feel great about, but you can very much stick them in your flex and feel sort of fine about, especially in deeper like 3 wide receiver 1 flex leagues. At wide receiver 32 here, We have Michael Pittman, who is at home versus the Jaguars. And we know that Pittman is going to see, 25 to 30% of the targets in this offense. It's just tough to bet on him in Anthony Richardson's first game, his debut, where we know he has accuracy issues. There could be some serious growing pains here, especially versus a Jaguars defense that is improving as we go, where like Trayvon Walker and a lot of those young guys on that team are sort of coming along here. It's a pretty brutal spot. Now, I will say at least the environment's okay where they are 4.5-point underdogs at home versus the Jaguars. So maybe they'll have to pass the ball a lot more than they would like to. My only concern is that without Jonathan Taylor, if this Jaguars team gets out to an early lead and they just fall back into like too high and dare Anthony Richardson to beat them with his arm, I think things could get very ugly. So that's sort of the perspective I'm looking at with Michael Pittman Jr. Again, great player, great talent, going to have a big market share of this passing offense. But until we see what Richardson looks like in real NFL game action, I have a tough time betting on Pittman to produce right away. Then we have George Pickens at wide receiver 33. And this is just a boom-bust option to me at best, where the Steelers aren't projected to score a ton of points this week. Again, they could play faster, but you're kind of looking at a spot where you need the Steelers to fall behind and then kind of get desperate and target Pickens downfield. I think that Diontae Johnson is much more the preferred play here as kind of the intermediate to short area wide receiver out of the, behind the first down marker in terms of ADOT, whereas Pickens is more of your like Hail Mary throw downfield. And until we see him really command targets at a high rate and be a centerpiece option or cornerstone option in this offense, it's tough for me to start him with confidence outside of being a boom bust flex play early on in the season. Then at wide receiver 34, we have Jordan Addison, who could move way up these rankings depending on how many routes he runs. He is wide receiver 34 here. He's at home versus the Buccaneers. The Bucs have the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers last year. The Vikings are home favorites, projected for the 4th most points this week. That's a really good environment for Addison. It truly just comes down to how many routes are going to run him in week 1. If he completely has taken the wide receiver 2 chair and runs as many routes as Adam Thielen did last year, then it's wheels all the way up for Addison. It's just in week 1, it's tough to project that out the gates here. Then we have wide receiver 35, Brandin Cooks, who doesn't feel super sexy or anything, but you could convince me to move him higher, to be honest, where he is the second option on a passing offense that is the 8th highest team total this week. They are on the road versus the Giants in prime time, 3-point favorites here. He should command like a 20% target share, work downfield to catch a couple long balls and give you like a nice 13, 14-point game in a primetime game. And then our last wide receiver here is wide receiver 36, Marquise Brown. And he is just in a brutal spot where it's a good environment, right? He's going to be in Washington, 7-point underdogs. Are going to have to pass the ball a bunch, but this is the 32nd ranked team total this week, projected for just 15.5 points, which is just brutal stuff. Josh Dobbs at QB. You don't know how much this Washington team is going to be able to sustain drives, score, just pick up first downs. I think it's going to be tough for this Cardinals team against a really good Washington defense. But there's a chance that Marquise Brown catches like 9 balls for 70 yards and gives you a nice PPR week in your flex spot. Now, that's going to do it for us today. I'm going to leave sort of this picture up for you guys so you can kind of see like what the final rankings looks like. But I appreciate you guys sticking around. I appreciate you guys watching. We dropped the running back rankings video yesterday, and it seems like you guys love this format. So again, let me know how you guys like this. This is the wide receiver version of what we did yesterday. It seems like this is probably what we'll stick with for the early part of the season in terms of breaking down like weekly running backs and wide receivers. So I'm glad you guys have enjoyed this sort of new format. But as always, the entire thing, if you want the full rankings, flex rankings, wide receiver rankings, running back rankings, that'll be on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You'll find the link in the description, in the comment section down below. But if that doesn't interest you at all, it's all good. Just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, ice around my body like I'm